here this morning to give a mission minute on behalf of our call committee that was formed in order to work with our Senate and our congregation as part of the process of seeking and finding a new pastor that could lead us over the next several years after our beloved Pastor Kidd retires later this year. Let me start by saying we have formed the congregation has formed a call committee of 6 people. Technically, there are 2 co-chairs. I'm one of them. The other is Jeff Mason, who is off on business travel, so he sends his regrets in not being able to be here to address you today. But I will say on behalf of the entire call committee that we are honored and we are humbled to have been entrusted with this task on behalf of the congregation. And we thank you all. We thank Pastor Kidd and the Senate and the congregation for the support and the guidance that has been provided to us this far, particularly for the time and the thought and the energy that has gone into articulating who Augustana is as a congregation, what its priorities are now and in the future, and what the priorities and attributes are that we are looking for in our next pastor. The call committee is actively using all of that guidance as its guide in the work that it is doing now. I know that you are all very interested in where things stand and how the process is going. So to just sum all of that up, I will first say that it is a fairly long and involved process, and many of you probably know this as part of going through this process in the past at other stages in this church or other churches' lives. But Augustana is currently at the point where the Senate is in the final stages of compiling a slate of candidate names for the call committee to consider. And the way the process works is we are expecting to have between 3 and 5 names in our slate. We are hoping and working with the Senate to try to get a larger slate, more toward the number 5 rather than the number 3, if that's possible, given the time and the various factors that go into play with putting together a slate. But the reason for that is that the way the process generally works is you get a single slate at a time, so you don't get names in a serial fashion. So we will be working with a single slate and hoping that we can find a good match from within that slate. So we naturally want a slightly larger slate rather than a smaller slate. And we are working with the Senate as we speak, honestly, to finalize that process, and we are advocating for our congregation deliberately but with love throughout the process. And so we expect to have that slate of names anywhere between a few days and a few weeks, depending on the size and the various particulars with working out things with the potential candidates. And from that point, just as a very brief overview about the process, our plan is to conduct initial interviews with each of the members in the slate, and we hope to do that in a very short period of time. We're hoping to do it within a week if the candidate schedules will allow, no more than 2 weeks. And we will use that process to the particular candidates that we want to have for the next stage of more personalized and in-depth interviews. And so, in short, we are fairly far along in the process, but we are, of course, wanting to move the process as quickly as possible, but to be as careful and considerate throughout the process as we can be. As I mentioned before, we were given a lot of information and support from the congregation. This congregation has very high expectations I can tell you for its pastor, as I'm sure we've all seen throughout the years that we've had with Pastor Kidd, and those expectations have not dipped at all for the next pastor. So we have a lot of things that we are looking for, but we are doing so diligently, and the Senate is working with us in that process. And let me just close out this Mission Minute by just giving one other word of thanks, because one of the things that this process has done for us, at least for me, I would say, and I think maybe for other members of the call committee, that will help us as we look for our new leaders, is it has given us an opportunity to come together in Christian fellowship, to think about pastoral leadership from a more comprehensive and a different perspective, from the perspective of the leader, from the perspective of God's love, which is, not always the way that I tend to think about love, and it's a process, but it is something that I think it has given us an opportunity to do, and to think about how those things play into our work and to the future of Augustana. So I will wrap up with that. I'm sure there'll be folks who may have questions or things that they'll want to ask for us during the congregation, during the social hour. And I will be there for a bit. Maybe other members of the call committee will as well. But again, thank you, and please trust that we are working on behalf of all of you diligently.